The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 173 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on with you?
Hey, man, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man.
Yeah.
Man.
Hey, man.
How many mans can you get in one sentence? It's a raining mans. Hallelujah.
Is that really the lyrics to that song?
No, but I changed it from men to mans.
You just do that randomly.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, you can do that. You're the host. But I knew you would like that song. That's a song you would like.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love disco, man.
You love disco. And
Disco's my bag, baby.
everything that lyric means.
I don't know about that, but I see where you're going. So Gibbs, a couple of announcements.
Yeah.
People are loving the new T-Cat face masks. We're selling a ton of those in the store. If you haven't looked at them, check them out.
Yeah.
They're nice. The material's nice. The fit is nice. We're also working on some new t-shirts that will be out, I think, probably in the next few weeks, but we'll make an official announcement. They will be on a completely different site. We're going through a different company for these. So be on the lookout for those. Right now, we have a brand new episode out on True Crime All the Time. To me, Gibbs, another interesting, kind of lesser known case. We're talking about Daniel Remeda.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a natural born killer's vibe to this. You know, this is a guy in his late 20s with an 18-year-old girlfriend. They kind of go on the run. There are some other people involved.
Very fast moving.
It's a fast moving case in that it takes place within really a span of about, 2 to 3 weeks or so. But, these individuals murder a number of people in several different states. So make sure you check that out. All right, buddy, let's give our Patreon shout outs. We had Jess Clark.
Hey, Jess.
Jessica Cornwell.
Hey, thanks, Cornwell.
Kevin McDade.
Hey, McDade.
Katie Ellsworth.
What's going on, Katie?
Sydney MJ.
What's going on, Sydney?
Cheryl Thompson.
Hey, thanks, Cheryl.
Crystal Sockman.
Hey, Crystal.
Janine Oudman. Heather Staten.
Hey, Heather.
Laura Austin.
Hey, thanks, Laura.
Caroline Dill.
What's up, Dill?
Pat Sparrow.
Hey, Sparrow.
Marcy Moore.
Hey, thanks, MM.
Sarah Goldstone.
Hey, and the Goldstone.
You like that, right?
Too.
Dallas James.
Hey, Dallas.
Kelsey Brook.
What's going on, Kelsey?
Shay Wilcox.
Hey, Shay.
Nikki Francis.
Oh, thanks, Nikki.
Carly Tagg.
Hey, Carly.
Bridget Fox.
What's going on, Bridget?
Trisha Cornegay.
Cornegay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fry Kenyon.
Hey, Fry.
And last but not least, Devin Oscar Soros.
Oscar Soros.
Close.
Yeah.
So thank you to all the new Patreon supporters. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
All right.
This week we selected Robert Sabo.
Hey, thanks, Robert.
Been with us a long time. And I want to give a big thanks to all the people that continue to support us on Patreon.
Absolutely.
We had some great PayPal donations as well. Amy Hester.
Hey, thanks, Amy.
James Cariglio.
Hey, Cariglio.
Sue Ragland.
What's going on, Sue?
And Tammy Christie.
Hey, Tammy.
So thank you all as well. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
We are headed to Toronto, Canada, to talk about the 1982 unsolved murder of Christine Prince. Christine Prince grew up in the United Kingdom in the country of Wales. It's a place I've never been to. I know you spent quite a bit of time over there.
I did. Hung out with all the Welsh people.
Yep. I would like to get there someday. After graduating from primary school, Christine attended the Porthcawl College in Wales. She studied and graduated with a degree in early childhood development. Her hope was to work as a nanny or au pair, but there were no openings in her desired locations, so Christine had to take any job that she could to make ends meet.
Sounds like the typical college graduate story.
Yeah, and I think today, even more so probably than back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Christine ended up working at her local grocery store for several years before she caught a break. A Canadian family in Toronto placed an ad seeking a nanny with a degree in early childhood development. So Christine reached out to the Kruzick family, and they had several conversations before she was hired in 1981.
Well, she met all the criteria. Seemed like she's actually a perfect fit.
Well, when you're looking for a nanny, man, it doesn't get much better than to find one that has a degree in early childhood development.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
And on top of that, Welsh, so you get that cool little accent.
So Christine was ecstatic, and she relocated to Toronto, to the home of the Kruzick family, located at 66 Pinewood Avenue. And she began her live-in nanny and teaching responsibilities with the Kruzick's 3-year-old daughter, Nicole. Now, she had some other duties as well, such as cleaning and some occasional cooking.
That's what happens when you're a in-house nanny, right? You got to cook a little bit too, maybe clean up sometimes. It just goes with the territory. I mean, I was never a nanny.
You sound like you're speaking from experience.
I never had a nanny, but I always wanted to hire a nanny or a au pair just because I thought it'd be cool to say I have a au pair back at the house.
Thought all your friends would be jealous.
Yeah, but they never would be.
Well, my assumption is that they're paying her pretty well.
I would think so.
Because she's got the degree. She's not only teaching their daughter and looking after her, but she's doing some other duties around the house as well. After a few months in Toronto, Christine met another nanny from Wales named Gloria Betts. And, they kind of became best friends.
Well, when you're in a foreign country and you come across somebody that is from where you are, it's, there's going to have that connection naturally.
Yeah. Plus, the fact that she's in the new country, she doesn't have any friends there anyway, as far as I knew.
Yeah. I mean, I was ecstatic when I met somebody from the U.S. down in Ecuador. I was like, hey, you look like you're from the U.S. And we became best buddies.
Too bad they never got to know your real name.
Well, yeah.
And then nobody ever heard from them again.
But there are restrictions, limitations, things like that. Yeah.
So they became best friends. They would get together on their days off, talk about their jobs, how happy they were, the children they cared for. They both missed Wales, but they loved what they were doing, and they loved being in Toronto as well. In early April 1982, Christine and Gloria went out to their favorite Welsh pub. I think probably because the pub reminded them of home.
Yeah.
Christine and Gloria met two guys from Wales at this pub, and they all started to hang out together. Christine fell for one of the guys, David Curtis Smith, and they quickly became a couple. On Sunday, June 20th, 1982, 25-year-old Christine Prince and Gloria Betts met in downtown Toronto to catch a movie at the cinema in the early evening. Afterward, they met David Curtis Smith. This was around 11:30 p.m. after his shift at the Four Seasons Hotel, where he was a chef.
Yeah, he's cooking up some good meals there.
Got to be a pretty good chef, right?
If you're going to be working at the Four Seasons, you are.
So the three of them walked over to a nearby coffee shop. They hung out, drank their coffee, they ate some donuts.
Some of your favorite things to do.
There's a lot of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
They ended up talking till around 1:30 a.m. And then after that, the three of them left the coffee shop for their homes. David said goodbye and headed east, and the two young women headed west to the Bloor Street subway. They took the subway north to the St. Clair Street subway exit. Once there, they both exited and then jumped on the westbound St. Clair streetcar. After a few stops, Gloria got off at Bathurst Street and said goodbye to Christine. Christine took the streetcar 2 more stops to the Wickwood Avenue stop. She was last seen walking with her umbrella the short distance to Pinewood Avenue, headed to the Kruzick residence up a well-lit street. But that was it, Gibbs. She was never seen alive after that.
I mean, she was on her street. That's how close she was to being home.
In what sounds to have been probably a pretty nice neighborhood, right? A well-lit street. Now, it's early in the morning. I get that.
Right.
Probably not a lot of other people out at that time. So there is danger in that.
But like you said, it's a good area. Seems like an affluent neighborhood.
Later that morning, when the Kruzick family was awake, they were ready to head off to work, they called to Christine to come to the kitchen. She didn't answer their calls, so they went to check her room. And I think it was pretty obvious to them, Gibbs, that she had not made it home from the night before.
Could be a little alarming.
So they called the police around 7:30 a.m. to report Christine missing. That same morning, a woman found an umbrella that was later identified as Christine's near the curb in front of 18 Pinewood Avenue.
Just down the street from the Kruzick's house. Right there at 66. This is 18. That's not very far.
No, it can't be all that far. The lady carried the umbrella to the corner of St. Clair Street and Christie Street, and she left it at a shop there. Sometime around 9 a.m., a city worker found a wallet while trimming some grass next to Highway 401 near Meadowvale Road. The wallet turned out to belong to Christine Prince. So police concluded that Christine must have been abducted at the location where her umbrella was found in front of 18 Pinewood Avenue sometime in the early morning.
Well, I don't think that's too hard to figure out, right? I mean, there's her umbrella on the highway leading away. You find her wallet with her ID in it, you know.
It kind of leads you to believe that, okay, the abduction happened here. It caused her to drop the umbrella.
Yep.
Whoever took her probably threw the wallet out as they were driving away, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think the time frame is pretty easy to narrow down, right? She's last seen at roughly 1:30 or a little bit after. The Kruzicks wake up, she's not there. So you've got a window of maybe 5-6 hours.
Tops,
probably.
yeah.
On Tuesday morning, June 22nd, just a day later, the police received dozens of calls from motorists and pedestrians headed to work over the Sewell Road Bridge over the Rouge River. They told the police that they saw a nude body floating face down in the Rouge River. This is very close to the Toronto Zoo. Police arrived on the scene and they recovered this nude body from the river. It was a female.
So the police recognized the victim as Christine Prince because they had a photo from the day before from the family she was staying with. But they're still going to need confirmation.
And it was Mr. and Mrs. Kruzick who identified the victim positively as Christine Prince. And Gibbs, they had the daunting task of informing Christine's family back in Wales that their daughter had been abducted and murdered.
It's a phone call I wouldn't want to make or receive.
Either one.
Yeah.
I mean, and you think about it, it's not like they could have known her family all that well. Maybe they had talked to them on the phone a few times, but they couldn't have been good friends or anything like that. Very tough conversation to make either way.
Yeah.
But I think especially when you just really don't know these people and you're having to tell them that their daughter is deceased.
Yeah, it's just a tough call, man.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The medical examiner confirmed Christine's cause of death as drowning. But the examiner also confirmed that Christine had been sexually assaulted. She had a significant injury to her head, most likely from a blunt object, and her face was beaten. Her wrists appeared to have markings, as if they had been tied prior to being placed or dropped in the river. Investigators did not find her gold ring or her gold watch that she had on that night, and both of these were things that she wore every day.
These items are something that she never took off.
Investigators searched around the area where Christine's body was found. They found pieces of her clothing scattered about. However, about 250 yards away from where her body was found, the investigators located the murder scene. This is where they found the bulk of her clothing, her empty purse, and some rope. They found evidence of blood at this site as well. And I'm assuming adding all that together is what caused them to conclude that this was most likely the spot where she was murdered.
Right.
The murder site was down a long, secluded lane next to the Rouge River. Many teens and even adults would use this lane to pull into so that they could park. It was kind of like a
Lover's Lane.
Lover's Lane,
Yeah.
what we would call here in the States. I don't know what they call it in Canada. Probably Lover's Lane.
Or, let's go some park somewhere to make out, or, that other thing.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
Investigators collected evidence at the site. They made imprints of some tire tracks that came from a light 4-wheel drive truck. So what do you take that to mean, Gibbs? A light 4-wheel drive truck.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a Toyota pickup.
Well, to me, light, I'm assuming it's not a full size or a heavy duty.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the smaller trucks that you can get with 4-wheel drive.
Yeah,
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so back then, maybe like a Ford Ranger, a Chevy S10.
That's what I think of as a light pickup truck. I think Toyota made a smaller pickup truck as well. I don't know how many came with 4-wheel drive, maybe all of them.
Yeah.
So we talked about the fact that investigators thought Christine was abducted in front of 18 Pinewood. They figured that she was most likely hit over the head and then placed in a vehicle by one or more suspects. Then she was driven nearly 20 miles to the Rouge River Lover's Lane site. She was either bound on the drive to the murder site, if there was more than one suspect, police believed, or if there was only one, she was most likely bound at the murder site, also beaten, sexually assaulted, and either dragged to the river and drowned manually, or possibly tossed in the river while she was unconscious and she drowned.
All of that horrific, no matter which direction you go.
Yep. No matter how this murder went down, investigators looked into Christine's life. After she arrived in Toronto, nothing really jumped out at them, though. She worked hard for the Kruzick family. They adored her. Her boyfriend was devastated. And on top of that, he had an alibi and no apparent reason to want to kill her. Gibbs, you and I talk about it a lot, and I think it's common knowledge, right? Who do police look at first?
Yeah.
The husband, the wife, the boyfriend, the girlfriend. I think with husband and wives, you can find a lot of reasons why one would want to murder the other.
You could.
Right? There's jealousy, there's affairs, there's money.
Always money involved.
Life insurance. There's all these different things.
Yeah.
It's not that boyfriends and girlfriends don't murder each other. I just think there's not as many reasons. There's still the jealousy, there's the affairs, the cheating and things like that. But you're not going to have normally the monetary aspect that you would have with a husband and wife.
And the fact that these two just haven't been dating that long. Right? I think they're maybe a month into it.
There's no children. There's no alimony. There's not these things that you would find in a marriage type situation.
Not really been going out long enough to start seeing some activities that might make you jealous.
Doesn't mean it can't happen.
No.
I just think it's less likely than it is with, husbands, wives. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they were kind of stumped. They had some leads. They did a lot of interviews, but they really hadn't made much progress at all in the investigation.
No.
Now, I think the one thing that they theorized was that whoever did this, whether it was one suspect or multiple suspects, they had to have known the area pretty well. The area where she was abducted from, the murder site, the lover's lane, all of it, the river. But investigators were unsure if the suspect or suspects knew Christine personally, or they had just targeted her because she happened to, come off of a streetcar in that early morning hour, and she was an easy target.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the area that they kind of hang around and stake out, and here she comes getting off that streetcar, they look around, nobody around. Like you said, easy target, pick her up, drive her out to one of those secluded spots that they operate in.
And I think it's very important to the case, right? Because it really kind of leads you in the direction of suspects, right? If Christine is known to the killer or killers,
yeah,
then obviously that's a suspect pool. If this is a completely random act of violence, a random target, your suspect pool goes up exponentially.
In both scary situations, but the latter is even more scary.
Yeah. On May 28th, 1982, this was less than a month before Christine's body was discovered, the RCMP had an unsolved murder and sexual assault under investigation. The victim was 19-year-old Jenny Isafort, who had been out on the town with some friends on May 27th. In the early morning hours of May 28th, investigators found out that she boarded a bus at Shepherd Avenue and a man boarded right behind her. Now, Jenny sat behind the bus driver, and this man went to the very back row of the bus. Jenny lived in the North York section of Toronto and was headed home. The bus stopped at the top of her street, and her house was just about 100 yards away. As the bus driver started to shut the door, the man from the back ran up and he exited the bus. The bus drove off. Later that morning, a local woman walking in the neighborhood was 5 houses away from Jenny's house when she saw a dead body in the front yard. It was Jenny. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. Then on July 12th, just a few weeks after Christine's body was found, another victim was found stabbed to death. She had also been sexually assaulted. Another woman, 21-year-old Claudia Gebert, was found stabbed to death. She had also been sexually assaulted. So what you had, Gibbs, was residents of Toronto and, some of these local communities, they were shocked. And there was a lot of concern for women's safety, especially younger women who appeared to be the target of this killer or killers.
I would think that I know what I would be doing back then. I would be calling my daughter saying, hey, you don't need to be leaving your house for a while.
And at the very least, don't be coming home in the early morning hours, because that seems to be kind of the target time frame for this killer.
And don't be traveling alone anymore.
That too.
Yeah.
The RCMP needed help trying to solve these murders. They were getting a ton of pressure from both the press and the community. Everyone wanted answers. So the RCMP reached out to the FBI to get assistance with a profile of Christine's killers. And we're saying killers now, Gibbs, because at the time, the FBI felt that it was two different suspects who beat Christine, abducted her, bound her, and then continued to beat her until she was unconscious. Then they felt that the dominant killer of the pair sexually assaulted her while the other watched. They also believed that these two were local because they had very detailed knowledge of the streets and the area down by the river. The FBI also addressed the serial killer theory that some in the press had put out there. They thought it was possible that these murders were related. The FBI stated that all three murders appeared to be sexual in nature. They thought that the victims were strangers to the killer or killers and were targeted pretty much because they happened to be in a location that was being staked out by the perpetrators. The FBI said that whoever was committing these murders would seek out targets similar in age, appearance, gender, build, and lifestyle. The other thing that the FBI thought was that whoever was committing these murders was unlikely to use a firearm because, these were lust killings. Using a firearm would not provide the psychosexual gratification because the weapon is just too impersonal.
Yeah, it has to be more personal for them, more hands-on, such as strangulation, blunt force, or stabbing with a sharp object.
So investigators have this FBI profile. And sometimes, Gibbs, I look at FBI profiles and I think, all right, I know they know what they're doing.
Right.
But some of this stuff seems very common sense.
Sure.
Not saying that you and I could be FBI profilers, but some of them do seem to be very common sense. But they have this profile. It just doesn't really help them all that much. They're not generating any new leads in either Christine's case or any of the others.
No, nothing's really developing.
And the RCMP in Toronto, they started to see an increase in unsolved murders over the next 10 years.
Yeah, it's kind of alarming. It really was.
On September 26, 1982, 25-year-old Delia Adriano's fiancé dropped her off in front of her parents' home in Oakville, just south of Toronto. He pulled away that evening around 9:30 p.m. But Delia was abducted before ever making it inside her house. Several witnesses heard some screams around 10:30 p.m. And another witness thought that they saw a man force Delia into a car.
Yeah, once she was inside the car, they thought they saw her arguing with this man for a few minutes.
Then on November 6th, later that year, a man cutting some trees down on a wooded lot found the body of a nude female. The body was severely decomposed, and next to the body was a purse. Inside the purse, authorities were able to use the ID to assist with identifying the body. It was Delia Adriano. But because of the body's condition, the medical examiner was not able to determine the cause of death or whether or not she was sexually assaulted. On Sunday, April 15th, 1990, 21-year-old Linda Shaw left her parents' home around 11 p.m. to head back to college because she had a paper due. She stopped at a service center off Highway 401 in Oxford County. She went inside to the Burger King there around 12:17 a.m. She ordered a hamburger, fries, and a drink to go, and then she left. Linda's car was found early Monday morning, abandoned on the shoulder about 7 miles up the highway. The car's rear window was shattered, and the right rear tire had a spare on it when the car was found, and it didn't have a spare on it when she left her parents' home. Police searched for Linda, but she was nowhere to be found. Then 1 week later, a farmer inspecting his land found a nude female body. The body showed signs of being beaten, burnt, and stabbed.
And on top of that, the victim had been sexually assaulted.
And hidden in the woods next to the farmland. Police theorized that while Linda was inside the service center, her killer messed with her tire, causing it to go flat about 7 miles up the road. Then the killer drove up, offered to assist in changing the tire, but instead attacked Linda. And again, Gibbs, the police had some leads, but none of them panned out, and her case went cold, as had so many others before hers.
Yeah, it's got to be frustrating for the victims' families, but also for the police. And the community wasn't happy with this either.
No, not at all. Now, Toronto is a very big city. And like any big city, it's going to have its share of murders and its share of unsolved murders.
Yeah. But these are young victims.
And they're all young females.
Mm-hmm.
And I think anytime you have a large number of victims that kind of fit the same demographics, I mean, naturally, people and the press are going to start looking at that and saying, what do we have here? Do we have a serial killer? Because that's what serial killers do.
Yeah.
Most of them kind of target the same type of person
right.
over and over because they target what they like, what they're infatuated with. It's kind of what they do.
Yeah, what's going to fill their fantasy?
On September 9th, 1989, 19-year-old Valerie Stevens vanished in the early morning hours after being out dancing at the Diamond Club in Toronto. Valerie was 4 months pregnant, and she had a 15-month-old daughter at home. Before going out dancing, she had left her daughter in the care of a teenage couple. 4 days later, police were called by the teenage babysitters. They had been taking care of Valerie's daughter. She had never come home. 4 days.
I'm just going to say this. 4 days is a long time to wait to call the police when you're watching. Now, maybe, because we don't know, maybe that was something that she did a lot. Hey, watch my kid, and some days went by. But for me, 4 days is a long period of time.
Well, if you look at it in the context of a normal babysitting job.
Yeah.
The normal babysitting job is either one night,
right,
and the person comes home later that night and the job ends, or it's agreed upon ahead of time that it's going to be for a certain number of days.
Exactly.
Very rarely is it open-ended.
Yeah. And I remember before I had kids, I didn't mind watching my little niece, right? But, watch her overnight, okay. By day 2, I'm like, hey, now.
Yeah.
Day 3. I mean,
when you're not a parent and or if it's not your child,
yeah,
that starts to get old very quickly.
Just a little bit. You're like,
it
hey,
just does.
I need to go to work. I don't know. I don't know. What am I going to do here?
So I'm with you completely in the fact that it is kind of mystifying that 4 days would go by before, you would reach out to police. But like you said, we don't know all the details, but I mean, at the very least, it seems strange.
Yeah, to me it does. So the police thought that was strange, but they also thought it was strange that a mother would leave their child alone with somebody for 4 days without making contact. And on top of that, they were able to see that she didn't touch her bank account and she never deposited her last welfare check.
All of that, strange. Right? No doubt that the police would find it strange. I think we all would find that strange. Parents don't leave their kids. Good parents,
right.
Most parents,
right,
don't leave their kids for that long and not even make a phone call to check up on them, to see how they're doing. And if you're going to be out for, X number of days, chances are you're going to need some money. You're going to have to use a debit card. Some type of financial transaction is going to occur within those 4 days. And when it doesn't, that's not a good sign.
No.
But again, Gibbs, investigators, they just couldn't develop any really good leads. It was almost as if Valerie disappeared into thin air. That was until 3 years later. On October 22nd, 1992, two hunters found some skeletal remains in some marshy woods near the town of Burford. It took authorities 2 months to develop some reconstructive photos, and that's what really led them to figure out who the remains might belong to. And then from there, they used dental records to confirm that the remains were Valerie Stevens. So the police theory was that she went out dancing that night, and then she tried to get a ride home. She tried to hitchhike home, but she met the wrong person.
Yeah.
And someone killed her early that morning.
You know how we feel about hitchhiking.
Well, it can be very, very bad, detrimental. And in our TCAT case this week, if you haven't listened to it, it can be detrimental in another way.
Absolutely.
So we kind of talked about this already, right? The RCMP and the FBI, their initial thought was that a serial killer committed Christine Prince's murder, killed the 5 women that we've discussed, as well as several others. Between the years of 1982 and 1992, one name that comes up as a possible suspect in Christine's murder and some of the others is Paul Bernardo, the Scarborough rapist. Gibbs, you and I profiled Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka on an episode of TCAT.
We did.
At the time of Christine's murder, Bernardo would have been 18 years old and attending the University of Toronto. I think the problem with Paul is it's not believed that he started killing until the 1990s.
We know he was sexually assaulting victims in the late 80s, but could he have sexually assaulted and killed Christine in 1982? I mean...
Oh, yeah. Could he have? Yeah. I mean, I think anything is possible. Could Christine have been Paul Bernardo's first murder at the age of 18? Possibly.
Yeah.
The problem is, as far as I know, there's no evidence to support it.
Right.
His name comes up, much like the Zodiac's name comes up with murders in the California area and the surrounding areas.
Bundy comes up over here in this area and all that stuff. Yep.
He was a bad guy. No doubt about it. So, when you're a bad guy, your name's going to come up as a possibility.
Yeah.
William Daniel Wood, also known as Danny Wood, was looked at as the potential killer of Christine Prince and Claudia Gabert. Wood walked into the Toronto Police Headquarters with his attorney in mid-July of 1982 to surrender for questioning in the murder of Judy Ann Delisle. Judy was a 38-year-old woman who was found murdered and semi-nude. She had been strangled with her pantyhose. So Wood was charged and convicted for Judy Delisle's murder, and he received a sentence of 25 years to life. In 1985, Wood was also charged and convicted in the 1979 murder and sexual assault of 50-year-old Merla Marie Laycock. But Wood appealed his conviction in the Laycock murder, and he won. But he was convicted again in 1990 and received 25 years to life. This guy, Gibbs, he was a drifter, traveled across much of Canada.
Bad guy.
Yeah, bad guy. Police believe he may have raped and murdered women all along the Highway 11 corridor. He may be responsible for as many as 15 murders.
It's a pretty big number.
So not out of the question that a guy like this could have been responsible for Christine's and Claudia's murders. He was out, right? Both murders occurred before he surrendered to police. So it's possible. The problem, again, is he didn't confess to those murders.
No.
And police don't have any information or evidence, I think, conclusively linking him to either one.
Because he's known, it's easy to try to link him.
Yeah,
versus somebody unknown.
Much easier than somebody unknown, for sure. And Gibbs, I mentioned just a little bit ago that a couple of these cases have been solved. Linda Shaw's killer was finally identified in 2005 through DNA. It was 15 years after she was murdered. The killer was a man named Alan Craig McDonald. He murdered Linda while he was on parole, living at a halfway house in 1990. And he was on parole from killing a police officer and a taxi driver in 1975.
All right, a double murder, out on parole. Sounds like the system failed there.
Well, we know, right? Canada is a little more lenient than what we're used to here in the United States. There's no doubt about that. We've covered that in a number of Canadian cases, and you can say it's right or wrong. I mean, there's an argument to be made on both sides. So they knew that McDonald killed Linda, but authorities were never able to try him because he took his own life in 1994 inside a phone booth.
Contain that mess, I guess.
Not that there's ever really a good place to take your own life, but that sounds like a strange place.
It's very strange.
Jennifer Isaford's killer was also finally identified in 1995. William Brett Henson's DNA was extracted from saliva on a discarded cigarette. It matched the genetic code of semen found on Jennifer Isaford. A jury found William Brett Henson guilty of the 1982 sexual assault and murder of Jennifer Isaford. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison in 1997. In 2014, Barry Rule, a retired sergeant for the Ontario Police Division of the RCMP, wrote a book called A Viable Suspect. In his book, he covers many murders and how he believes the RCMP came up short on solving many of them. Rule talks in his book about how he had an encounter with a person that he believes to have been the Toronto serial killer. Now, in the book, he gives this serial killer a fictitious name, Larry Talbot.
Which happens to be the same fictitious name that they give the Wolfman in all the Wolfman movies. Which the last Wolfman movie was played by, you know who? That
Michael J. Fox?
No. That's a good Wolfman too.
I know, he's a wolf. And what is a Wolfman? Because I've seen some Wolfman movies, but I've never seen a Wolfman movie.
What's that guy you like? Benicio
del Toro?
That's him.
Jeez.
Him and Anthony Hopkins.
You're not
they
even
did.
close.
They did the last one. The last Wolfman.
I don't think I saw that. And I've definitely never seen a Wolfman movie ever.
Watch out for the Wolfman.
But Barry Rule believes that Larry Talbot, this fictitious name, but real person, could be responsible for the death of Christine Prince and many of the other girls and women in southwestern Ontario during the 1980s and 1990s. Now, I haven't read the book. I don't know what proof he has, but
interesting.
Again, all of it's interesting to me when you're talking about an unsolved case because the directions lead all over the place, right? Yeah. The spider webs and the branches, they just
keep going.
They keep going. You just got to find the right one. And that's what's so tough for police. I think with all of these cases, and, you know, especially with the murder of Christine Prince, were these women murdered by multiple people? Or did Ontario have a serial killer who operated over, you know, an extended period of time? Or did you have multiple killers?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things in play here. The one thing that can't be discounted from my point of view is the fact that a lot of young women lost their lives in what appear to be very similar circumstances similar ages. That part is hard to disregard. That kind of leads to the belief that, okay, this could be a serial killer, as the FBI kind of thought back then.
Right.
Because you have a person that is out searching for the same type of victim, which oftentimes means serial killer.
I definitely think it was a serial killer or multiple killers.
Or more than one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can probably lean more towards more than one.
Yeah, I don't know. There have been pairs, right, of serial killers. You and I have profiled some on TCAT. The majority of serial killers, though, operate alone.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a fact. That's pretty well documented. But it doesn't mean that people don't pair up, because we know they do. But that's it. That's it for the case of the murder of Christine Prince. Gibbs, we got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Mike, Gibby, it's James. How you guys doing? Hey, I just became a Patreon, and I just wanted to call and say I love you guys. I have loved true crime my entire life, ever since I was a kid. Everyone thinks I'm kind of weird, but man, I think I've listened to all your podcasts, True Crime All the Time, Unsolved, Criminology. I've listened to them all probably twice, and I can't wait for a new episode every week. I get kind of anxious when I don't get one. I'll check my I have Stitcher. I'll check my Stitcher, and there's nothing new, and then I'll just start a random one. I'll click in the middle and listen to it. But I just want to say I love you guys, Team Mike and Gibby. You guys kick ass, and stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Love you guys.
Man, we love you too, brother.
Yeah.
I'm energized by that voicemail.
It was pretty hyped up.
Now, all we have to do, Gibbs, is keep kicking ass. That's all we got to do.
Just keep it going. Keep it going. Kicking that ass.
And we will do kicking that ass. And we will do that. But we appreciate it very much.
We do.
And we definitely appreciate the fact that you've chosen to support us on Patreon. That's awesome.
Okay, boys. This is Lizard Funk from Western Mass. I've got a term for you. I'm in accounting, and I've done auditing, and I don't know if you ever heard this, but professional skepticism. And people call in and say that your show has made them, don't know if it made paranoid or just creeped out all the time or whatnot. So they need to have the term TCAT skepticism. Get a shirt on the front that says TCAT skepticism. On the back says stay safe, keep your own time ticking. And then eventually you guys can come up with the do's and don'ts of, you see that alleyway over there with no street light on? Don't go that way. Or, hey, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and my friends are leaving, but I still want to stay. No, you go home with your friends, all right? Stay safe, have your TCAT skepticism, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Number 3 is don't ever get in a car with Gibby.
Ever. Yeah, I like that. Let's get that on a shirt.
Under any circumstances. I actually kind of like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Allison from Arkansas, and I'm calling to say that I'm a huge fan of TCAT Unsolved. I prefer the unsolved cases because they focus on the victims and not the perpetrators. A little true crime trivia about my family is that my mom grew up in Park City, Kansas, and her neighbor down the street was a man named Dennis Rader, also known as BTK. He was the dog catcher in their neighborhood for many, many years. Anyway, I wanted to suggest a case. The Little Rock 3, not to be confused with the West Memphis 3, is an unsolved case of 3 boys hit by a train in the middle of the night. And the mystery is, why were they laying on the tracks? Were they already dead? Anyway, keep up the good work. Keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Yeah, we haven't done that case. That's the boys on the tracks.
Yeah.
Or what people often refer to as the boys on the tracks. I know it's a case that we'll do at some point in time. So you and I definitely covered BTK very early on.
We did.
In the history of TCAT. I mean, it's like, 3 episodes, maybe 4, 5, 6.
I think so.
6, 7, 8, something like that.
Early on.
So definitely check that out. I know you don't like the solved ones as much, but BTK, he was something.
He was, exactly.
And to realize that you lived on the same street and you saw this guy as the dog catcher driving around, that would be spooky, man.
It would be.
Hey guys, I'm Cammie from California, and I have a kind of strange question. Feel kind of weird asking, but I'm genuinely curious. So you guys do all these podcasts and obviously learn so much about so many different prisons in many different states and countries. I'm wondering, if you were to have committed a crime, where would you ideally serve your time? Like, do you have a favorite, that's weird, a favorite prison, though? Just wondering. Anyway, love your guys' work. I just became a Patreon member. And, yeah, I really appreciate everything that you guys do. Thanks. See ya.
Very interesting question.
Yeah.
I think you have to take it in a couple of different parts. First of all, I'm not going to commit a crime in any of those countries where they cut your hand off, like for stealing.
No.
That's out.
That's out.
If you're talking the United States and you're talking about a capital crime,
Stay away from taxes.
then you have to say California, because chances are they'll probably never put anyone to death ever again.
Exactly.
But it wouldn't be the United States, right? If you had to pick, you would pick some of the countries, and we've profiled cases in some of them that are just a little bit more lenient when it comes to sentencing than the United States. Canada's there. I'm trying to think of what some of the other ones, but definitely Canada's more lenient, and there are many others. The United States is pretty tough when it comes to sentencing.
I go to New Guinea.
You don't even know where New Guinea is.
That's where I go, though.
Like on TCAT, you said you were going to Nova Scotia to catch a plane, even though you thought it was in Scandinavia.
Hey, I know what I'm doing here.
All right, but we appreciate the call.
All right.
And that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.